Hello. Today Road to GH will reveal exciting content in the next 2 weeks from March 24th to April 4th, 2025. First, between March 24th and March 28th, Jason intensified his quiet campaign to pull Carly away from Brennan, convinced that her involvement with him was dangerous not only for her but for everyone connected to her. Jason's instincts had rarely been wrong, and this time, he sensed something off about Brennan, something lurking beneath the surface that Carly refused to see. His concern wasn't driven by jealousy, but by loyalty and fear for her safety. However, Carly remained resolute. After years of heartbreak and disappointment, she wasn't willing to let go of a man who treated her with genuine care and offered her a chance at something real. She knew what it meant to trust her instincts, and despite Jason's warnings, her heart led her in a different direction. Carly and Brennan began to discuss what lay ahead for them, slowly peeling back the layers of uncertainty that still surrounded their blossoming romance. Theirs wasn't a love built on fantasy, but rather a cautious and evolving bond that had been tested by doubt and judgment from those around them. Yet in the quiet moments they shared, away from the scrutiny of others, they found something rare, comfort in each other's presence. Carly, often guarded and strong-willed, allowed herself moments of vulnerability with Brennan. In turn, Brennan proved to be a patient and understanding partner, never pressing too hard but always making it clear that he saw a future with her. As they looked ahead, both made an unspoken pact: no matter how loud the voices of disapproval became, they would not let others dictate the path of their connection. Meanwhile, Jocelyn was facing her own internal battle, one far more complex than she had anticipated. As a new recruit for the WSB, she quickly discovered that the world of covert intelligence was not merely about physical readiness, but about mastering control over one's own truth. Vaughn had already delivered that reality with unflinching honesty, pushing her to understand the weight of discretion. He had warned her that secrecy wasn't just protocol, it was a weapon, a shield, and a burden all at once. Every detail she held back could one day mean the difference between life and death. It was a lesson she absorbed, though not without struggle. The pull between her old life and her new responsibilities began to blur the line between who she was and who she was becoming. Second, at the Port Charles Police Department, Valentine approached Alexis with a request that carried the weight of both urgency and emotional complexity. Though he spoke in measured tones, there was a subtle tension beneath his words that hinted at something deeper, something personal. Alexis, having known Valentine long enough to recognize the signs, could tell this wasn't just another legal formality or political favor. The shadow of concern that briefly crossed his face suggested that Charlotte might once again be at the center of his turmoil. Her recent behavior, coupled with Valentine's increasing desperation to protect her, made it clear that he was searching for answers, or perhaps redemption. But there was also the possibility that his request involved something unrelated to Charlotte, something that threatened to unravel another carefully guarded corner of his life. Elsewhere in Port Charles, Nina found herself in the middle of a storm she hadn't anticipated. At Drew's home, what began as a quiet visit quickly spiraled into confrontation after he discovered that she had secretly searched his private safe. The betrayal hit Drew hard, not just because of the invasion of privacy, but because it reinforced every doubt he had about Nina's judgment. He had been willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, to believe she was capable of change after everything that had unfolded in the past year. But this act confirmed that Nina still hadn't learned the value of boundaries or trust. His anger wasn't loud, but it was sharp, cold, measured, and deeply hurtful. Willow, having entered the room moments after Drew's revelation, stood frozen in disbelief. The hurt in her eyes was unmistakable. She had given Nina more than one chance, hoping that time and effort could eventually mend their strained relationship. But this new betrayal cut deep. For Willow, it wasn't just about Drew, it was about the lingering sense that Nina's need to control and manipulate remained intact. As Drew lashed out with justified fury, Willow's silence spoke volumes. Her disappointment, layered with sadness and frustration, created a wall between her and Nina that no apology could easily tear down. It was the kind of wound that reopened old scars and threatened the fragile truce they had been building. Nina, shaken and exposed, struggled to explain herself. Her intentions had never been to harm anyone, at least not in her mind. She had convinced herself that she needed to know the truth, that she had a right to protect herself in a world that constantly tried to shut her out. But the damage was done. The room around her felt colder, the distance between her and the people she loved growing wider by the second. Drew, having lost what little patience he had left, made it clear she was no longer welcome. And as Willow turned away, barely able to meet her eyes, Nina was left alone with the crushing realization that once again, she had become her own worst enemy. Third, despite the backlash she faced, Nina may have uncovered something deeply troubling in Drew's safe, something that changed the course of her anger and redirected it into calculated action. Buried beneath layers of business documents and personal files, she found what appeared to be sensitive medical information tied to Portia, documents that hinted at Drew's quiet manipulation of the doctor's position at the hospital. The realization hit Nina hard: Drew wasn't the noble man he pretended to be. He had secrets of his own, and worse, he had been exploiting Portia for reasons Nina couldn't yet fully grasp. Instead of crumbling under the weight of rejection from Willow and Drew, Nina steeled herself and reached out to Portia directly, ready to turn her pain into strategy. When Nina confronted Portia with what she had found, the doctor was visibly shaken. She had long suspected that Drew's interest in her work wasn't purely professional, but she had never expected it to become this clear. The files Nina presented confirmed what Portia feared: Drew had been monitoring certain patients, pushing for access to restricted data, and possibly using her credentials to dig into confidential hospital records. As a respected physician with a strict code of ethics, Portia was furious to realize she had been manipulated. Her trust had been compromised, and her professional reputation now hung in the balance. The alliance with Nina formed not out of friendship, but necessity. Two women with different motivations, suddenly united by a common enemy. Determined to take control of the situation, Portia began her own quiet investigation into Drew's recent activity at the hospital. She combed through digital logs, pulled patient records he had requested access to, and even revisited conversations that once seemed innocuous but now felt suspicious. In doing so, she discovered anomalies: unusual access requests, unexplained notes in patient files, and discrepancies that pointed to a larger scheme. Each piece of evidence she uncovered further validated Nina's suspicions and deepened her own resolve. Portia, normally composed and cautious, now found herself leaning into a more aggressive stance. She wasn't just protecting herself, she was preparing to expose Drew and dismantle whatever he had built at her expense. Fourth, Tracy, always sharp and instinctively perceptive, quickly sensed that something wasn't right after Lois abruptly returned to Bensonhurst without much explanation. The sudden departure left a noticeable tension lingering in the Quartermain household, and Tracy's suspicions soon turned toward Brooke Lynn. Watching her granddaughter closely, she picked up on subtle changes: nervous energy, vague answers, and an unease that Brooke Lynn couldn't quite hide. Tracy, unwilling to let things slide, decided to confront her directly. She interrogated Brooke Lynn with her usual bluntness, hoping to catch her off guard and force the truth to the surface. But Brooke Lynn, clearly distressed, only dug herself deeper into a silence that raised more questions than answers. Meanwhile, Ned remained unaware of the deeper turmoil unfolding beneath the surface. Hoping to bring peace to the family, he unveiled a new plan to help Lois and Brooke Lynn reconcile. His intentions were heartfelt. He believed that if he could orchestrate a moment of genuine connection between mother and daughter, it might help bridge whatever emotional distance had formed between them. Perhaps a surprise family dinner or a heartfelt letter would do the trick. Yet Ned was operating without full knowledge of the situation, and his good-natured efforts were unknowingly brushing up against a far more complex issue, one involving secrets that neither Lois nor Brooke Lynn were prepared to confront openly. Unbeknownst to Ned, Brooke Lynn had become entangled in something far more sensitive, a situation involving a child, possibly connected to a hidden adoption or a personal choice she regretted but couldn't undo. Lois, during her visit, may have discovered fragments of the truth or sensed something troubling enough to prompt her sudden departure. Rather than press the issue and risk exposing Brooke Lynn, Lois chose to walk away, temporarily, at least. Ned, still in the dark, pressed forward with his plan, unaware that his actions might lead him straight to a buried truth that could change everything. Small comments from Brooke Lynn, or the emotional weight Lois carried as she left, would soon begin to form the pieces of a puzzle Ned couldn't ignore. Fifth, Lulu, still navigating the emotional aftermath of her recovery, finds herself burdened by a secret she can no longer keep. The weight of what she knows presses heavily on her, especially as she watches Dante move on with his life, unaware of the child who remains hidden from him. Despite her lingering feelings for Dante and the deep history they share, Lulu makes the difficult decision not to tell him, at least, not yet. Instead, she turns to someone she trusts implicitly, Maxie. Their friendship, forged through years of triumphs and heartbreaks, gives Lulu the space to open up. In a quiet, emotionally charged moment, Lulu reveals the truth, her voice trembling as she shares the secret she has guarded for far too long. Maxie, though shocked, becomes the first person to know the reality that could eventually shatter lives or, perhaps, bring long overdue clarity. Elsewhere in Port Charles, tensions escalate as Ezra Boyle crosses a line that leaves Laura both furious and deeply unsettled. Known for his calculating demeanor and mysterious motives, Ezra pushes Laura to a breaking point, forcing her to confront not only him but the growing sense of instability he brings to her family. Laura, always the pillar of strength and diplomacy, finds herself reacting with raw emotion as Ezra manipulates the circumstances around them. Whether he is connected to the child Lulu is hiding or has his own dark agenda, one thing becomes clear: his presence is more dangerous than anyone initially realized. At the same time, a volatile dynamic continues to build between Christina and Ava. What began as subtle tension has now ignited into something far more combustible. Christina, already dealing with internal struggles and the pressure of her growing responsibilities, sees Ava as a manipulative force trying to exert control over situations that should be none of her concern. Ava, always sharp and unafraid to use leverage to her advantage, finds herself with the upper hand in a crucial moment. She issues a threat, delivered with her signature poise and veiled menace, one that forces Christina to act. Fueled by emotion and a desire to protect those she loves, Christina makes a bold, impulsive move that she believes is necessary, even if it goes against her better judgment. Sixth, Jason found himself increasingly unsettled as new developments in Port Charles continued to spiral beyond his control. Though his primary concern remained Carly and her deepening connection to Brennan, something else gnawed at the edges of his instincts, an unease he couldn't quite explain. Carly's refusal to distance herself from Brennan frustrated him, but there was more at stake than just matters of the heart. Jason had lived through enough betrayal and danger to recognize when something wasn't right, and this time, his concern wasn't rooted in jealousy, it was rooted in fear. Whether Brennan was hiding something or manipulating Carly for his own agenda, Jason knew he had to act before it was too late. The silence surrounding Brennan's past, coupled with his increasing influence over Carly, became a shadow Jason could no longer ignore. Across town, Elizabeth was caught off guard by a completely unexpected gesture from Lucky. After months, perhaps even years, of distance and uncertainty, Lucky re-entered her life with something that felt both personal and filled with hope. Though she had prepared herself to keep things platonic for the sake of peace, the look in Lucky's eyes and the sincerity of his surprise hinted at something more. It wasn't just a gift or a memory, it was a step toward reconciliation. For Elizabeth, the possibility of reconnecting with Lucky in a romantic way stirred up long-suppressed feelings. His return didn't feel fleeting this time. There was a quiet steadiness to him that suggested he was back not only for her, but for the life they had left behind. Whether or not she was ready to embrace it, the gesture marked a turning point in their complicated history. Elsewhere, Emma found herself thrust into a situation that demanded courage and swift action. Whatever had drawn her into danger wasn't entirely clear, whether it was a personal vendetta, a misstep, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time, but Emma reacted with urgency and bravery. With no one immediately available to help her, she made a bold decision to protect herself, even if it meant crossing lines she never imagined she would. Her actions weren't reckless, but they were desperate, fueled by instinct and a desire to do what was right. Fortunately, Gio, always watching over her from a careful distance, sensed the tension building and arrived just in time to intervene. His presence was more than just a rescue. It was a reminder that even when Emma thought she had to face things alone, she wasn't without support. Finally, during the week of March 31st to April 4th, revelations begin to unravel that suggest Marco is far more complex than he initially appeared. His arrival at Windmere is anything but casual. Beneath the charm and easy confidence lies a web of secrets that threatens to shake the foundations of several lives in Port Charles. As he explores the Gothic estate, the truth slowly emerges. Marco may, in fact, be the secret son of Jen Sidwell and Natalia Ramirez. His presence in town isn't coincidental, but rather calculated, perhaps part of a larger scheme orchestrated by his powerful and secretive father. The mystery surrounding his identity deepens, and Windmere becomes the setting for a long-buried truth that is finally ready to surface. Lucas, caught in the throes of a new romance, has fallen hard for Marco. There's something disarming about Marco's attention, his thoughtful gestures, and the way he listens without judgment. For Lucas, who spent years healing from heartbreak and betrayal, Marco seems like a chance to start over. But trust doesn't come easily, especially when whispers about Marco's past begin to surface. Lucas finds himself questioning the sincerity of Marco's intentions, whether his affection is real or merely part of a broader plan linked to the Ramirez and Sidwell legacy. As much as he wants to believe in this second chance at love, doubts creep in, threatening to destroy something he desperately hoped would be genuine. Meanwhile, Brad begins to take notice of the situation, and he's not convinced that Marco is who he claims to be. Protective of Lucas, Brad quietly starts investigating Marco's background, using his resources and connections to dig deeper. What he uncovers is disturbing: ties to Sidwell's shady dealings, inconsistencies in Marco's story, and rumors of hidden agendas. The more Brad learns, the more he fears that Lucas is being manipulated again. Though their own relationship ended in heartbreak, Brad still cares for Lucas, and he's not about to stand by while someone else exploits him. His instincts, often clouded by his own mistakes, now serve as the only warning sign Lucas might have before it's too late.